I learned a long time ago that in my family, I wasn't someone to be seen, just someone to be hidden, but nothing prepared me for the moment my own sister, Miranda, grabbed my wrist at her wedding and whispered, "Don't go near the VIPs. You'll embarrass me." The words didn't bruise, they cut, because she said them loud enough for the people behind her to hear, and quiet enough to pretend she hadn't meant them. I smiled like it didn't hurt, like Orlena Marrow hadn't been shrinking herself for years just to keep the peace. But that was the day something cracked. And when the general walked in, when he said my name, my real name, the entire room finally realized the truth. My own family never cared to ask. The road up the Colorado Range felt narrower than I remembered, a winding strip carved into stone and ice. By the time I reached the resort, the sun had sunk low enough to turn the snowfields into sheets of orange glass. I hauled my suitcase through the front doors and caught the quick, practiced glance from the check-in clerk, the kind that sorted guests into tiers before a word was spoken. My worn jacket and hiking boots landed me somewhere near the bottom. The lobby was full of polished people who moved like they were born knowing how to belong. I tried to shake the cold from my hands when Miranda stepped out of the elevator, draped in ivory and confidence. Her eyes swept over me in a single, clinical pass, the way someone judges whether a table centerpiece needs to be replaced. Whatever she saw, it wasn't enough to soften her expression. She reminded me to keep my distance from the high-profile guests, especially one particular figure whose arrival clearly meant the world to her. She didn't raise her voice, but the message landed with the weight of something long rehearsed. I nodded because pushing back would only make the rest of the weekend harder, not because I accepted the role she kept assigning me. Later, alone in the small room tucked near the service hallway, I watched the lights from the main lodge cast shifting reflections across the snow. The muffled laughter drifting in from the courtyard felt like it came from a world I'd never been invited into. And as I sat on the edge of the narrow bed, I realized the truth I'd spent years trying not to name. I had stepped right back into the place my family always kept open for me, just outside the frame. Close enough to be useful, far enough to never be seen. The resort shifted into something almost theatrical by late afternoon, as if the entire place had been prepped for a fundraiser instead of a wedding. Staff hurried in tight formations, carrying floral towers and tiered dessert trays with military precision. I hadn't even fully stepped into the atrium before Marjorie materialized, gliding toward me with her pearls arranged like armor. She tugged her gloves into place and gave me a smile that pretended to be gracious but landed like a slap. "At least you look more put together this time." I stood still, letting the comment slide off me the way I'd learned to let most of her commentary evaporate before it reached the bone. But the ballroom tested even the patience I'd spent a lifetime cultivating. Miranda's future in-laws gathered near the stage, laughing softly over hedge funds and political committees, as though discussing dinner reservations. When I took a seat at the edge of their group, a man with expensive taste and a tone sharpened by entitlement leaned in just enough to make sure everyone could hear him ask if airport security ever involved anything challenging. The chuckles that followed were small, but pointed little darts that didn't draw blood but still stung. I forced my expression to stay neutral and let my eyes trace the room instead. Movement calmed me. Patterns told the truth. That was when a flash from across the ballroom snagged my attention. A man near a marble column adjusted his smartwatch, but the gesture wasn't casual. He angled his wrist deliberately, tapping through a sequence too precise to be anything but an off-grid transfer. The reflection off the screen gave it away, a data exfil attempt. Quick and hidden, disguised as a nervous habit. My camera strap buzzed lightly against my collarbone a second later, confirming what my gut already knew. AFRICOM potential leak location. Confirm presence, STS. The floor seemed to tilt with the weight of two realities crashing together, one where I was a punchline, and another where a message like that could mean the difference between life and death. Then I spotted him, Captain Nolan, standing near the velvet rope of the VIP lounge. His expression flickered, just briefly, before he recovered and gave me a small tap to his tie. Recognition, a silent message, a signal no one else in this room would ever understand. But Miranda saw enough to draw her own conclusions. The slight narrowing of her eyes said everything. She didn't know who Nolan was. She didn't need to. All she saw was me stepping out of the role she desperately needed me to stay in. Something in the air shifted after that, an undercurrent I could feel but couldn't name yet. The laughter grew tighter, the glances quicker, the veneer thinner. And for the first time since arriving, I knew the night wasn't going to stay contained within the pretty walls of this resort. Evening settled in with the dim glow of string lights and the hum of a string quartet warming up. But the tension didn't loosen around me. I slipped behind the bar to take a breath, only for Miranda to appear beside me, like a shadow pulled too taut. She looked flawless from across the room, up close. Her fingers trembled as she adjusted her necklace. "Don't talk to any of the military guests. I mean it. Tomorrow matters." Her voice cracked on the last word. I didn't respond, because at that exact moment, my camera strap vibrated again, hard this time. A coded urgency pulsed against my skin. A set of coordinates. A region. A 2-hour deadline. I stepped into the hallway to breathe, but the faint echo of boots behind me pulled me back into alertness. Nolan approached with urgency wrapped in restraint. His voice was low, controlled the way only someone under extreme pressure learns to manage. "Marrow, Niger just went dark. We think the leak is happening here." The hallway suddenly felt too small, the air too thin. Music floated from the ballroom, soft, romantic, completely out of sync with the storm taking shape inside me. Two lives pressed against each other, demanding things from me I wasn't sure I could give simultaneously. When I returned to the table, Miranda was waiting with an expression that blended fear and irritation into something sharp. She didn't ask what was wrong. She didn't want to know. She only saw disruption. "You always manage to create chaos. Stay away from that section." "I won't repeat myself." She turned away before I could say a word, as if conversation itself might stain her. Nolan's warning echoed through my mind with every heartbeat. If we don't stop this tonight, they won't make it till morning. Leaving wasn't an option anymore. Whatever was happening in this mountain resort wasn't just a wedding detail gone wrong. It was the center of a breach, and whether my family liked it or not, I was already in the middle of it. Morning haze still clung to the Rockies when I stepped into the ballroom, where the air smelled of cut flowers and polished pine. Miranda was hovering beside her future mother-in-law, fixing a clasp on the woman's dress while wearing the brittle smile she saved for people she needed to impress. I barely reached the nearest table when a voice behind me chimed loud enough for half the room to hear. "Well, look who's here. Portland TSA. Bet you've got some great stories." Laughter followed, not cruel enough to cause a scene, just sharp enough to land where it hurt. I'd learned to let it roll off, but learning never made it painless. I slipped into the hallway to breathe. The second the door swung shut behind me, Nolan appeared, as if the shadows had shaped themselves into his frame. "What?" His voice was low, barely a whisper. "Marrow, Africom lost 2 more windows. Niger's bleeding out fast. If this leak completes, they won't make it through the night." Cold stung my fingers as I tightened them around my camera strap. I didn't have time to respond because a flash of light burst from the gift room. A single, unnatural pulse. A faint electronic tremor hummed through the air. So subtle, most people would never register it. Someone was running a transmitter inside. I moved toward the door, but Miranda burst out from the ballroom and seized my arm, her face taut with embarrassment. "What are you doing? They're checking that room for some signal. People are wondering if you touched something you shouldn't have." Her tone wavered more with fear of judgment than fear of danger. Before I could answer, a resort employee rushed across the lobby, announcing that a high-ranking military guest might arrive earlier than expected. A general? Miranda blanched. I stayed still. She had no idea that the man they were preparing for wasn't a stranger to me at all. Pressure swelled in my chest, tightening with every passing second. Niger's chances were slipping. The people laughing inside the ballroom had no idea a countdown was ticking beneath their celebrations. By mid-afternoon, the resort vibrated with quiet unrest. Security doubled their patrols, radios hissed more frequently, and the lobby lights flicked on before the sun had even begun to set. Someone whispered that the important guest would arrive any moment. Miranda dragged me into the corridor behind the kitchen, her heels snapping sharply against the tile. "Please, don't let anyone important talk to you. If they learn what you do, they'll think we're small." Her words cut deeper than she meant them to. Before I could speak, My camera strap jolted hard against my shoulder. A red alert. Data leak confirmed main hall proximity. Immediate action needed. My pulse slammed in my throat. I scanned the hall and found the same businessman from last night, crouched near the champagne crates. His hand disappearing behind the wood. Nolan emerged from the opposite end. His voice was barely audible. Signals coming from inside a champagne barrel. If he pushes the final packet, Niger's finished. I stepped toward the display, but Miranda blocked my path. Panic blooming across her face. Stay away from the VIPs. You're drawing attention. Don't ruin this day for me. It wasn't a warning. It was an exile. I stepped back. Nolan's gaze flickered with something like pity. I hated that almost as much as the situation. The hallway lights flickered overhead. The resort radio crackled. General Hawthorne is on site. Repeat, General Marcus Hawthorne has arrived. The words ripped through me like a live current. Miranda froze mid-sentence. A cold draft rolled down the corridor as footsteps steady. Commanding, unmistakable, approached from the lobby. I turned toward the sound. I knew that cadence anywhere. He was here. And for the first time all weekend, I felt the ground shifting towards something inevitable, two worlds colliding, neither willing to make room for the other. The morning of the wedding was so blisteringly bright, it felt hostile. Sunlight ricocheted off the glass walls of the resort, turning every surface into a mirror I didn't want to see myself in. Inside, the atmosphere tightened with movement, staff rushing past with armfuls of linens, radios snapping with instructions, whispers about the arriving VIP layering over one another like static. I slipped into the side ballroom to help with last-minute arrangements. Though Miranda barely acknowledged me, she didn't want help. She wanted no trace of me in her curated world. I set a crate of flowers down just as a woman from her fiancé's family called across the room that I needed to step out of the shot. She said it politely, but the word clean hung in the air like she was scraping something off her shoe. I moved back into the shadowed corner, but the strap at my neck vibrated a sharp, repetitive pulse. The signal matched what I'd picked up the night before. The leak was active. I turned toward the champagne display. The same wooden barrel sat beneath a white draped table, but this time a faint green LED glowed through the sliver under the lid. Someone had restarted the device. Before I could get closer, a resort security officer approached, suspicion written across his face. Someone had clearly complained about me. I handed over my badge, but he barely glanced at it before Miranda rushed in. Her voice pitched with panic as she insisted I shouldn't linger near anything important. The whole room seemed to pivot toward us, eyes narrowing in judgment. I stepped back. Just one step, but it was enough to reinforce every assumption they'd already made about me. Nolan appeared in the doorway the next moment. Tension carved along his jaw. His voice was tight. Marrow. Leak escalated. We've got 30 minutes. 30 minutes for Niger. 30 minutes before a recon unit halfway across the world lost whatever chance it had left. My device pinged again. Extreme priority. Confirm the transmitter before 14:20. The ceremony would start at 14:30. I began moving toward the barrels, but Miranda grabbed my wrist, her face blotched with humiliation. She demanded to know why I couldn't just stay still, blend in, act normal. The answer sat heavy in my chest if I stayed still. Men on another continent would die, and then movement at the entrance. A silhouette stepped inside, tall, measured, familiar down to the weight of each footfall. General Hawthorne had arrived, and he was heading straight toward the ballroom. The afternoon thickened like a storm cloud pressing low. I stood near the hallway leading to the kitchen, close enough to watch the champagne display without violating Brooke and Hunter aesthetic rules. Stacy brushed past and murmured that Miranda wanted me out of every photo. Not just the group ones, all of them. Easier to pretend I wasn't family at all. 3 of the groom's relatives paused near me and spoke as though I were invisible. They wondered why I was even invited, whether Miranda had said I worked airport security, and whether that explained my clothes. Each comment landed sharp, a reminder of the place I'd been boxed into for years. Then the LED beneath the champagne lid flipped from green to red. Transmission phase. Final stage. If it completed, Niger wouldn't have anyone left to save. I started toward it immediately, but a resort employee intercepted me. saying the area was restricted for VIPs. Across the room, Miranda gestured frantically for security to steer me away. Fear blooming across her face, not fear for others, only fear of embarrassment. Nolan reached me from the opposite side, speaking through clenched teeth. If we don't break that signal now, the recon team is gone. Give me 30 seconds, I told him. He nodded once, as if trusting me cost him something. I stepped toward the service route until Miranda blocked me again, voice rising to a brittle crack. She accused me of trying to ruin her wedding, demanded I stop drawing attention. The entire ballroom turned to stare, makeup bright and judgment heavy. Before she could order security to remove me, the resort radio cracked loud above us. General Hawthorne is entering the main hall. All staff prepare. Conversation froze. Even the air held still. Then I heard it, the unmistakable rhythm of his stride. The doors opened. A cold draft swept in, and General Marcus Hawthorne walked into the ballroom. Miranda's voice died mid-command as he scanned the room once, and his gaze locked on me, steady and certain, as if I were the only person there. I stood wedged between the champagne barrels and Miranda's outstretched arm, security tightening behind me while Nolan signaled from across the room. My heartbeat thudded like a countdown. Then the ballroom doors burst open. The footsteps were unmistakable, measured, commanding, each one striking the floor with the precision of a man who never enters a room unsure of his authority. General Marcus Hawthorne stepped inside, and the entire ballroom froze as if someone had cut the power. Miranda was mid-command, trying to summon security. When her voice simply vanished, the general swept his gaze across the crowd, slicing through layers of polished faces and forced smiles, until his eyes locked directly onto mine. I didn't move. Recognition hit instantly sharp, unwavering. Marrow! Special Liaison Marrow! What on earth are you doing here? Silence exploded. The band halted mid-note. A microphone slipped from someone's grip. A child's candy clattered on the floor. Dozens of eyes that had dismissed me all weekend now widened as the truth punched through their assumptions. The general strode toward me. Miranda instinctively stepped aside. He extended his hand in the firm, battlefield way, reserved for people he trusted with lives. If she's here, this is her call. No one touches Marrow without my approval. Shock rippled through the room. He leaned in close. We traced the leak. It's here! Isn't it? I nodded. Then let's shut it down. The moment the general confirmed his authority, security stepped aside, creating a clear line straight to the champagne barrels. He moved with purpose beside me. Nolan just behind us, the three of us slipping into a formation that felt muscle-deep and familiar. The red LED inside the wooden crate blinked faster final transmission stage. Lundi, no margin left. The general's voice carried enough weight to steady the room. Marrow, you take the lead. There was no time to absorb how those words landed. I crouched beside the barrel, sliding my hand along the inner seam until the faint vibration of the transmitter buzzed against my fingertips. I felt the clock ticking through the wood. Block the feed, I told Nolan. He activated the jammer. While the general shifted his stance, shielding me from every angle, I pulled the transmitter free, a tiny matte black sliver, deceptively harmless. The screen showed coordinates, a recon unit in Niger marked with chilling precision. One completed upload, and they'd be dead before nightfall. I keyed in the override. The red light died. A hush fell, as if the room exhaled at once. Security detained the businessman lingering nearby. His excuses faltered when Nolan presented the evidence. Stand down. Marrow, leak is neutralized. I rose to a wall of stunned faces, politicians, donors, relatives who'd never looked at me twice. Miranda's voice shook. Who are you? My stepmother clutched her chest. Why didn't you ever say I met their eyes? No one ever wanted to know. The general turned to them, voice firm. She saved 44 of my operators last fall, and she may have saved another team today. Silence swallowed the ballroom whole. By evening, once the leak had been handed off to the federal team, I returned to my room. No one from my family approached me. Miranda's in-laws hovered near a stone column, avoiding eye contact. Miranda herself stood off to the side, eyes red, hands clasped tightly as if holding herself together was its own battle. In the quiet hallway, the general crossed paths with me. He rested a steady hand on my shoulder, his voice low. "You did good. Marrow, if you want advancement, I can put your name in for the Pentagon program." I nodded. A simple thank you all I could offer. No dramatics, no tears, just the clean weight of respect. I packed my things, walked through the lobby with dust from the service hall still clinging to my shoes. No one asked for a photo. No one tried to stop me. Outside, cold mountain wind swept over the resort as the federal car pulled up. Snowlight shimmered across the grounds when my phone buzzed. A message from Miranda. "Can we talk? I want to understand." I stared at it for a long moment, feeling the ache of all the years I had waited for that kind of question. Tonight, it wasn't offered out of recognition, only fear of what she'd ignored. I opened the message and hit archive, leaning my head against the window as the engine started. I let out a slow breath. They told me to stay away from the VIPs, but what I really needed was to stay away from the people who never saw me at all.